Yes, I will. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we will start with public participation. Dr. Joyner and Dr. White.
Dr. Joyner, are you ready? Dr. Joyner, you're muted.
I have to use my phone because the battery is not in my thing, so I'll use my phone. Yeah, babe, you get a battery. Yeah. So, all right, we can start now.
Our first speaker is Edward Matthews. Edward Matthews, you may speak.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share our story. For the sake of time, I will be sharing a condensed version, but earlier today, I emailed you a detailed version of our experience. Our son, who is the youngest of 4 children, was a 4th grade student at Conti West Hills until last Monday, when we had no choice but to withdraw him from NHPS. He began this school year excited about being back in the classroom, but that quickly changed when he began having daily confrontations with peers and some teachers. For example, a child threatened to bring his father's gun to school to shoot our son. After an investigation was completed, we were assured that our son was no longer in danger. A few days later, a teacher told us that our son needed to be more forgiving of others after he refused to play with the child who threatened them. We submitted a request to transfer our son back to FAME. Within a few days, we received a generic denial letter. My wife is a school social worker at FAME. She requested a repairing harm meeting in order to address the difficulties our son was having with his teacher. My wife explained that our son felt his teacher did not like him. He said that she would roll his eyes at him and sigh when he raised his hand. Instead, we were offered a meeting for the teacher to review her expectations. Our son was ultimately denied that opportunity to express himself. We emailed the Director of Choice and Enrollment Office in an effort to appeal the transfer denial. We received a generic response. It was obvious our email was not read. I was able to speak with Mr. Middleton, who told me that if he read every email from every parent, he wouldn't get any work done. Mr. Middleton said that he would pull up the transfer request to be reviewed again. We never heard back from him. We sent another transfer request back in December. My wife also began emailing Ms. Hannons, the assistant superintendent in charge of both Conti and FAME, on a regular basis to plead for the transfer. We kept our 4 kids home for the first days in January due to the spike in the COVID cases. When my son went back, he was told to take the reading inventory. He sat at the front of the classroom while his teacher taught a lesson. Children were speaking and a video was being played feet away from him. According to our son, teachers said that everybody's score went up except one person several times throughout the day. While looking at our son, while saying one person's. Again, our son felt bullied by his teacher. He would shake and cry anytime we spoke to him and going back to school. We decided to keep our son home to protect him. We continued to reach out to Ms. Hannons, who ultimately denied us the transfer and said it was not possible. At this point, we decided to withdraw our son. We share our story because we want you to be aware of what we now perceive to be a blanket no transfer policy that is currently in place in our district. Parents are given false hope that their request to transfers will be read, reviewed, and considered. But in reality, there is no chance that the transfer will occur, regardless of the circumstances. Students are trapped in whatever school they are currently enrolled for the entire year. NHPS failed our youngest son. As my daughters would say, New Haven, you have to do better. Thank you for your time. Good evening.
Our next speaker is Leslie Blatt.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Blatt. I'm the president of the New Haven Federation of Teachers. In 1 month, we will arrive at the 2-year anniversary of the COVID-19 pandemic permanently impacting our school system, our community, and the way we teach and learn. It's clear that so much has changed. Ask anyone who is working in our schools and they will tell you the unprecedented exhaustion and anxiety and the erosion of trust that is central to the health of any organization are causing people to question why they show up to school every day. So first, I want to acknowledge this reality. This am I going to make it reality. This is how people feel. And it's okay to name this in service of meeting people's needs and collaborating to solve some of our most challenging problems. Acknowledging this reality is a prerequisite for responsive and thoughtful action. People are not wrong to have these feelings. In fact, I'd be worried if people were not feeling some doubt, hopelessness, and outrage. Our world was turned upside down. We lost family, friends, rituals, routines, experiences, and opportunities. So much has changed. But I'd like to ask us all tonight, how have our schools changed? When, where, and how did we give our school communities, our teachers and students specifically, permission to slow down, breathe, play, rebuild, and heal? Or have we doubled down on a model that forgets what we know about child development, intrinsic motivation, and a strengths-based approach? We urge our leaders here at the local level and at the state and national level as well to listen to the students and educators who are letting us know that this current system is not working for us. This call to action is not about blame. It is about moving forward together with trust and a willingness to nurture and a belief that for education to work, we must be willing to honor one another's humanity. Many of us who care deeply about student learning feel a disconnect when we try to do our jobs in a way that prioritizes the whole child. On one hand, we hear about the need to support students, create space for joy in the learning process, and practice self-care. And on the other hand, we feel intense pressure related to data collection, data entry, pacing charts, and ongoing monitoring. We need support with our students' behavioral and emotional struggles, with the overwhelming vacancies in some of our schools. Educators deserve fair pay, and we have the right to autonomy, safety, dignity, and respect in our workplaces. Even the office that handles personnel and labor relations issues is understaffed and needs more support and resources from this board to meet the complex demands of this moment. We know this board can play a role in addressing these systemic issues, and we believe the public listening can play a role ensuring New Haven has the resources and the will to take action. Thank you, and thank you to New Haven's educators who are giving so much of themselves during this incredibly intense time.
Madam President, that concludes the hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner and Dr. White. We'll move on to the action items.
Madam President, one hand went up right as I said that.
Go ahead.
I have to reset my timer. Okay, we're good. You can start. Who is it?
Hi, it's Kirsten Hopes McFadden. I am extremely upset. My morale has been really low for the past week. Teachers are so overwhelmed and so stressed out that all I want to do is just sit in my room and hide. When I talk to my mom, who was a longtime educator, I tell her, Mom, I wasn't arrested today. That should not be my goal, is not to be arrested. That arrest is even in the toolkit for educators now is outrageous. Now, teachers may get into situations where students take them to a level where they may not necessarily be. And that has happened since I was in school. But the police weren't called. It was a conversation, maybe some help with that teacher to figure out what was going on. At the most, DCF referral, and most of those are dismissed. But to see teachers being arrested, seeing things being allowed to be filmed and sent to the media. We have these policies about no cameras, no cell phones, but nobody's enforcing anything. All we're getting as teachers is don't escalate a situation. Don't get involved with an altercation with a child. Let the child, who's running the building now? And then on the other hand, we're told, well, stand in the hallway. What am I going to stand in the hallway for if I can't say anything to the children? What's the point of me being there? If the child wants to walk out the room, let them walk out the room. If they wanted to sit there and play on their cell phones, let them play on their cell phones. Are they running the building now? Are they the ones in charge? Then you want us to have goals of what we're going to get done? My goal is not to get arrested. That's my TVAL goal. I don't want to get arrested. If I'm going to get arrested, I might as well sell drugs or rob a bank. I did not get into the teaching profession to get arrested. I could go practice law, which I'm licensed to do. I could go sell real estate, which I'm licensed to do.
Time.
I used to work with children because I care about them. But this is being really, really hard for us to do our jobs. Thank you.
Madam President, now that concludes all the raised hands.
Thank you, Dr. White and Dr. Joyner. And we'll move on to the action items. The first being the approval of the board meeting minutes. The motion to accept. A motion to approve, Mr. Wilcox.
Yes, I move we approve the meeting minutes for the January 24th meeting.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to approve the meeting minutes of January 24th, 2022. Mr. Bolton is not in. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough.
Yes.
I don't see the students, Dr. White. Do you see them in the?
They are
Mashai
not-
won't be here, so I meant to
Okay.
tell you that at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
I don't think Anthony will be here either.
Okay.
I didn't
thank
hear
you.
from him.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, and so the meetings, the minutes pass. Next item, the personnel report, Dr. Tracy.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon, evening, good evening, board members and public who may be listening and watching. We have personnel report. I want to highlight on this personnel report on the action item, Miss Linda Hammond, that's being promoted to Chief Financial Officer. She was our interim Chief Financial Officer, and now we're moving her up to the permanent position. We also have a couple of other small promotional items to in-house suspension worker, community care coordinators, etc., on our blue sheet. We call it our blue sheet, our personal report. I ask that the board, we call it the blues. I ask that the board please accept the person as is.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes, I'd like to make a motion, and that is that we approve the action items of the superintendent's personnel report.
thank you, Mr. Wilcox.
I want to second that.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Any discussion? Dr. Joyner?
Real quick, these are some outstanding people. I can't think of a better person to be our CFO than Linda Hannons. I've known her since she was a child. And she has the ethics and the know-how. And I'm just glad that she was able to stick around long enough for this to happen.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any other discussion? Mr. Wilcox, Dr. Benitez after.
I'll just also add very briefly that as Chair of the Finance and Operations Committee, it's been great working with Ms. Hannons through this interim period, and it's going to be great moving forward. So thank you for your work to this point and your continued work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Benitez?
Yes, I wanted to also reiterate what everybody else is saying about Miss Hannans. Linda has been always part of the team. And as a former principal, I could not think of anybody better to do something like this because she was truly our right hand when it came to finances. So this is truly a great move for the district, and I congratulate her formally at this point. We haven't voted yet, but
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Any other discussion?
And I think, Madam President, we need to look at the years of experience, 50 years.
Mhm.
That's older than some of us on this Zoom right now.
She was a
And
kid.
that Linda is old. She started at a very young.
She was in high school when she started doing that kind of.
Oh, Dr. Tracy, I don't know that she would have wanted you to mention that, but.
This is what you call longevity. This is what you call staying with it.
Yeah, and good genes.
For the purpose of-
Epps
Thank you.
genes.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Seeing no further discussion, we'll vote on approving the personnel report, the action items of the personnel report. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. And personnel reports passed. Congratulations, Ms. Hannons. Okay, next item.
For
So we're,
Madam President,
Dr. Tracy.
I have to go to the information on the sheet. I need to acknowledge
Oh,
that
go ahead.
two of our principals are leaving to move on to better things. Dr. Joseph Johnson, Dr. Glenn Worthy. Dr. Joseph Johnson moving into Waterbury, and to the assistant superintendent there, Dr. Glenn Worthy will be working with DCF, working with those students in juvenile detention in terms of their educational aspirations. And on here, we also have some teachers and paras who are resigning from the system. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you. I want to thank them for their service to New Haven Public Schools.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. Any discussion around that? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, the approval of the CABE core policy manual. We're going to be skipping, and that is because the request, I spoke with Tiffany Jackson and others, and the request is just for us to approve the purchase of the CABE model policies, I guess the software. And it's something that Dr. Tracy at her discretion can approve. It doesn't need board approval. So we'll move on from that. Finance and Operations Committee, Mr. Wilcox.
All right, thank you very much. Before I make the motion, I just wanted to remind everybody that if there is something you want separated out and not voted on as a block, please let me know. You can let me know ahead of time, or you can let me know now. But hearing and seeing nothing related to that, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion, and that is that we accept and approve the 4 abstracts and the agreements listed and the 2 contracts and the 3 change orders as listed on our agenda as action items.
There a second? Dr. Joyner?
Yes. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote to approve the F&O items. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, and so F&O items passed. Moving on to students report, still no students. Does anyone have a report from them maybe? No?
No.
Okay. Teaching and learning, Dr. Joyner?
I'll be brief. I guess the highlight of my last week was an extended conversation I had with Dr. Benitez about the philosophy and the idea that we want a philosophy that reflects who we are and who we teach. And we have to say some really truthful things about the status of our students and the kind of education they need in order to excel. She talked about the pathways, six developmental pathways, that we really do have to be concerned about the whole child. And the president of the union mentioned that earlier tonight, and by extension, the whole person when we talk about our staff, and that people have different needs, social needs, emotional needs, and so on and so forth. And we have to address those. So what I've sent to the board and to members of the committee is a revised version of the philosophy based on feedback from a number of you, and it's still a work in progress. You can still provide feedback. And we want to get that, we want to get definitions down so that it's very clear what we mean by authentic assessment and a social and emotional learning, what have you. We also want to get the state statutes down that will support what we're trying to do. So we'll need a glossary, we'll need the effective statutes, and we will also need a research base that says that this is evidence-based policymaking. So we're working on that. We got some good sources for that. And we have enough experience in the district to make sure we do that. So once we get the philosophy adopted and with the definitions and the statutes and the evidence base, we'll be ready to refer to the governor's committee, where Dr. Benitez and I believe you're working with Dr. Yarborough. Two of you on governance.
I still don't have a vice chair.
Okay, so that was I guess that was wishful thinking on my part. But if I can
He's
help you,
jumping at it. He wants it.
yeah, well, he's highly qualified, both in terms of lived experience and his educational background. So you're going to be looking at, you can look at what we have to date tonight if you check your email, and we have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday where we're going to review it again. But at this point, I believe that it's in a position, at least the philosophy statement is in a position to go to governance for review. And then once we get the boilerplate software, then we can make adjustments. We have to walk that ground between CABE in terms of their legal expertise and what have you, and our needs as an urban school district. CABE is a great organization, but it's not as urban oriented as we are. So we have to have that. So that's where we're going, and you can read what we've sent thus far. And please send your comments back to me so that I can make the adjustments. It's easier to have one author to do revisions than to have a whole bunch. So the stuff that I put in that you requested, Dr. Benitez, you know that well, and you can take a look at it and give me feedback on that. And anybody else as well. Matt, I've been counting on you to come back with some stuff too. So that's where we are.
Sounds good. Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any discussion or questions for Dr. Joyner? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you again, Madam President. There are about 3 things after my update. We will have the proposed 2022-23 budget presentation by Ms. Hammonds. manufacturing update, Ms. Evelyn Velasquez, and presentation of the new K-5 science program by Dr. Richard Therian. Let me start first with our updates and some good news. Julie Anderson is a Spanish teacher in Nathan Hale. She was just named the World Language Teacher of the Year for the Northeast region. She was named Connecticut World Language Teacher of the Year last fall. She also has been selected as the regional winner out of all the nominees from the Northeastern states. Jessica Haxton stated, Trudy is an incredible teacher, contributor to our department and to the profession nationally, and this honor is well deserved. Congratulations to Trudy Anderson. Trudy will travel to the Asheville conference in November to compete for National World Language Teacher of the Year, and we wish her well. We know she will do it. She'll come back with having that national honor. Gary Moore of Hillhouse High School breaks the 53-year-old shot put record at the class indoor track championship. He threw a distance of 64 feet. He is also the #3 in the US and has a scholarship to Baylor. Congratulations to Gary Moore. That's Coach Moore's son.
Yes.
Also, yes, so that's things to celebrate for us also. I also want to share with the board that we are purchasing home libraries for all students to help to increase access to reading materials and to encourage independent reading away from home, away from school. So all students in New Haven Public School will be receiving home libraries. So we want to invest our funds well and to focus a lot on literacy. There's a decrease in COVID cases this week. 45 cases were reported in our VOC system. And that's a marked decrease since we started. We're able to secure a CFO in these crucial times. A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bushes. This is our bird in the hand, Miss Linda Hands. We are planning a day of hope and healing for everyone, staff and students, to commence in March. And in your packet board, there's a proclamation. We want to use that, I think it's March 18th as a half day to do this day of hope and healing, to get our staff and students somewhat centered. We understand and we know that there are challenges that our staff, not just teachers, all staff is facing in our school system. All students are faced with challenges. We do understand that there are things that we are planning to do with some of these things, such as we are retaining and working with Clifford Bears to work with our staff and students in some of the issues that we see that, quite frankly, many are out of our hands, out of our control, to be honest with you. When students display dysregulated behaviors or mental health issues, that takes a different level of work to work with our students. And so we are planning this day. Hopefully this will be a day that went as well as we did last year. I want to commend those teachers who are doing their best to engage with students and foster relationships. We want to commend all students who are doing what is right in school. We've heard of concerns from when I met with the union president this last week, and we heard of concerns that are coming from some schools about the challenges that teachers are facing. I just want to also say that when parents hear a situation with their youngsters and they call the police officers, that's also out of our control. So I think it may be that people believe that the schools call the police officers on teachers. It's not so. Mental health issues are challenges. How to effectively deal with these? Working with Clifford Bears to strategically target areas of greatest needs. Still working on chronic absenteeism and student engagement. Student behavioral concerns in some schools, many result of mental health issues. COVID-19 still there, not gone. We still have to be careful. We can't give up now and say we can just let loose. No, this thing, we do not know how this COVID works. It may just come back with a vengeance. I hope not, but we still have to be careful and take all necessary precautions. We still are plagued with staff shortages, substitute shortages, despite raising the sub pay, we're still having shortages with our subs. Students' failure rate, another challenging thing with Midland High School. We're verifying the data at this time and we report at our next email of where what that data is showing. And I know we cannot blame everything on COVID. We still have to exercise high expectations for our youngsters. Think of 2 years away from not being completely structured. And now they come back to school and we have an unstructured environment. We will have problems and we're seeing those problems. But it does not prevent us from still having high expectations of everyone, including myself. So those are some of the good news and challenges that we have. I will email this to the board as soon as I get to that. So please make sure you check on this that I have penned about March 18th, and the proclamation is also in your packet. I don't know, I have to ask, do I have to get your permission to have the half a day, or? I think we do we? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my only question is this a proclamation on your part? Like you are proclaiming this, or are you asking the board to proclaim this? And I don't have an opinion either way as to how that should be. But it was unclear to me as to.
We want to, as a system, to proclaim that day. And it's originally a full day, and we're asking for a half day.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to endorse the idea, but I would think you have the authority to set aside some special days as long as they don't detract from the number of days in the school year. So.
I want to know I'm doing what is right.
Dr. Joyner. Dr. Joyner, you're muted. You're muted.
What typically happens is that any kind of modification takes place when the calendar is submitted to the board for total review. And I'm just speculating that something like this, it might be better if we approved it. It wouldn't hurt because it's a half day. I don't know if it was in the original calendar that we approved. And so we could take the weight off of the superintendent if the board approved it. And I think we can modify the agenda to do it with a 2/3 vote.
There have to be a motion to modify the agenda
Yeah,
to
yeah,
add
which-
this, and then we vote on that.
Right. So, Matt, if you and I could make that motion, I think would make it easier for everybody. And I think it's a good message to send to the community that the board is behind the superintendent in this. So, Madam Chair, I move to amend the agenda to for the board to review the request from the superintendent to sponsor an official proclamation to recognize the third Friday in March as SEL Day in New Haven, Connecticut.
Second.
And properly seconded. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to amend the agenda to include the SEL vote. Dr. Benitez,
Yes,
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. So we've amended the agenda to include that item. Dr. Benitez?
I want to commend the superintendent and the team for doing this, but I want to remind everybody that it should be a learning experience, not just a lot of talking and a lot of people putting words in kids' minds, but kids putting words in our minds. So I'm hoping that that's the kind of exchange that happens on a day like that.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. Okay, so now the motion, Mr. Wilcox,
I was going to make a motion,
go ahead.
and that is that we endorse and approve the superintendent's proclamation regarding the New Haven Public Schools Day of Hope and Healing.
There a second?
Second,
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any discussion?
I want
Dr.
to,
Joyner? Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'd like to add to what Dr. Benitez says. It takes some people a long time to understand that we're not in the previous reality. And they may still carry the expectations that existed in that reality. And this is a hard time for everybody on the planet. And we have to take that in consideration. And we have to realize that some of the things that we have done, we can't do as well anymore. And we do have to take into account that we're in a period of strain, social and emotional strain, mental strain. And anybody that had pre-existing conditions, emotional and social conditions, it's even worse for them. And we're gonna have to be more patient with each other. We're gonna have to ask more of ourselves in order to get through this. And we need to hear the kids, but they also need to hear us, particularly if they're older children. And recognize that your teachers have feelings too, they have families too, they have challenges too. Your principal does, and that if we could just work together and be concerned about each other, we can get through this. That's the only way through.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote to approve Dr. Tracy's proclamation and the half day on, what's the date, March 18th?
March 18th, yes.
March 18th. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes, and that is my mom's birthday. Just so you know.
A good omen.
It's gonna be a wonderful March 18 every year.
Right.
Always remember me.
Happy birthday in advance. Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well, and so that motion passes.
Thank you so
Let's
much.
continue.
Thank you very much, board, for doing this for us. As you know, at the helm of this, Ms. Jackson, her SEL team have been busy at work planning. It was successful last year, and I'm sure this year will be no different. We need this time to woosah. Let me move on to, we're gonna now talk about the budget presentation at Ms. Hammond. So eloquently presented at the finance operation meeting and now sharing with the entire board. As before, I preface the whole thing by saying that every year we come with a budget. We were fortunate to close 2 budgets without, going to close 2 budgets successfully. We're now in this 3rd one. And it's important that there's an understanding that it takes a lot more than what we're presenting to run New Haven Public Schools. We are dependent a lot, and I see Dr. Benitez nodding her head, we're dependent a lot on grants, which we refer to as special funds. Majority of what fund our school system is special funds, which is dangerous. And I say dangerous in the sense that should we not be able to get some of those funds, all of those will go right over on general funds. So every year we present the general funds, but maybe don't articulate too well that our system, like they say, what is it about Dunkin' Donuts and it runs and what have you, our system runs on special funds.
You sort of doesn't run on Duncan.
Okay, so it is important to know that we're looking at least $56.7 million in special funds, and not in adding some of these new funds that we get into it, which would be a total of $358-point-something million, New Haven Public Schools. And if you look at the chart, you will see what we receive from the state, what we receive locally, and what we receive from grants. 51% of how we're running the system is from grants.
Wow.
Now, fortunately, some of these grants are competitive grants that we have to write for, thanks to my team that always takes up these things and write these grants. We also have some that are called entitlement funds, like Title I, and some of those others are entitlement funds that we look forward to getting, because the state owe it to us to give those funds to us. But the other grants we have to write for. That's why this time around, we try carefully not to put staff on some of these grants. The ones we put on these grants, we make sure we articulate to them that at the end of this grant period, it's over, unless there are other jobs within the system that we can put you in that, when teachers have left. But we articulate very clearly, end of this grant period, it's over. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that it's dangerous to be dependent so much on grants, but that's where we are as a system. So let's continue to hope that we'll continue receiving these funds. We know that 113 or more million will be going away in the next 2 years. That's the ESSER 2 and the ARC ESSER. Those will be gone. So we try to live within our means. We can't cut anything in these COVID times. More so, people are asking for more staffing to help take care of some of the challenges that we see happening in the schools. So in the past, people say, cut personnel, cut this, cut central office, cut this. All right, we'll cut central office and we just leave it. Miss Matt doesn't need to work. Eileen Tracy doesn't need to work. Keisha Hannon, Vivian, nobody, and then see how the system runs. They say, cut central office, cut the administrators, cut the teachers. We can't do that. We're looking for more personnel to help run the system so it can be an effectively and efficiently run system. So there's a lot of talk, but people really don't understand. If Dr. John and others can recall, last year we had mitigation, 2 years ago, we had a mitigation group, if you can recall. And when they came in and examined our fund, they said, really, there's nothing to cut. That's our point. We have been saying that. So I'm hoping this year we'll have sufficient funds in our general funds to actually run what it is we're running for the system. And it's heavily staffed, more than 74% staffing. So I close my mouth and let the CFO make her presentation.
Good evening, President. First, I would like to thank you all for having the faith in me to work on this budget.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear?
Wilcox said yes. Okay. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Matt, you're hearing? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Mhm.
Good evening, President Rivera, Chairman Wilcox, and other committee members of the board. I come before you this evening to present the 22-23 proposed general fund budget. As I go through the presentation, you will see that I have included the district's strategic plan for 2024, which speaks to the core values, the mission, and the vision of the district, along with the 5 core values. I will also talk about the background of the budget, key trends, 2023 proposed budget, how each school is funded and the cost drivers, the proposed new items, how we would like to allocate at the school level, the different funding streams, additional resources, the budget calendar, and then I will have my final thoughts. So if we can go to page 2, basically right here are the objectives of the budget, and the objectives of the budget are to allocate our resources that promotes equity between our schools. And also that what we've been trying to do is to present a transparent budget process that is site-based and that it involves the instructional core and premised on a balanced budget. This budget presentation here reflects the true value of the district. Page 2. Okay. Something happened.
Diverse population.
Yeah, no, it's something. Yeah, okay. So first, this slide here talks about our diverse population, and right now we are currently at 19.293 students. And this chart here just basically shows our diversity in New Haven. Go to the next one. This slide here tells you how our schools are funded. So you can see that, as Dr. Tracy mentioned earlier, 51% of the district is funded by grants. And the other portion of the other 48% is funded by other funds, including some funds from the city as well. Okay. This page here shows you the ECS and the city contribution. So you can see here where we pick up the 142.5 for state aid, and then the difference is 48.2, which is the city contribution. The historical trends. If you notice, our enrollment has been going down since 2016. As you can see, the chart is down from 21. Right now, we're currently at 19,293 students. This chart here shows basically education cost sharing, and we wanted to show here was, again, the 142.5, and then plus the alliance funding is 20,000.3. This chart goes into the change in the grant funds. And if you notice, in 2016, we were at 96.7, and then we were going down. Then we went up a little bit, and we went up a little bit. And then in 2021, that's when we started receiving the ESSER grants and a few other grants. We got a few more dollars in the alliance grants. So now you can see where we're now over $200 million just in grant funds. The initial projection for next year, and this is where we're going with our budget request, we're currently at 190,718,697. Next year, we're requesting 063,784 with a difference of $9.3 million, which is an increase of 4.667%. And this chart here just basically shows how we'll be spending that money, and our cost drivers basically, again, are in our salaries and our tuition costs, our utilities and transportation. So all of these are our fixed costs, where the costs are going up historically. And that gets us to the $9.3 million that we're asking for. Our notable cost drivers, as I just said, were 74% of the general fund costs are in personnel, out of district tuition and transportation. Essentially, all of our full-time staff are part of a collective bargaining agreement. And for the three largest bargaining units, the following contractual changes are in place for 22-23. Teachers 3.5%, administrators 2.5%, and paraprofessors are 2.4%. All other salary changes are estimated at 2.25 to 2.5. We also have a price escalation as spelled out in our long-term agreements and contracts, and those cover our transportation, our building maintenance, and other general fixed items. This chart here just basically shows the estimated expenses and where they are. And as you can see, the bulk of it is basically all in personnel. We have some new items which we're proposing, but these items here are not in our general fund budget. As we're mitigating our grants. We're trying to make sure that any new costs go into the grant. So we have the manufacturing program. We're having a new reading program. We're getting contact area textbooks. We're supporting accelerated learning, set for success, 10 full-time FTEs. We already hired, I think, 3, so we have 7 more to go. And we're also ordering materials. We also are putting in money for increased play-based learning. We're implementing a new health curriculum. And then there will be the full implementation of the Black and Latinx studies, where we would be hiring 2 FTEs, PD plus materials for a cost of $7.2 million. This chart here basically was we're trying to show how we allocate at the school level. So after we pull out all the salaries and all the other fixed costs, we try to take a base amount and then try to allocate that based on the number of students in the school. On the second chart, it shows the difference in our funding stream. So as you can see, Troop is a Title I school. It's a Title I SIG school. And we have 59 EL students, which is 14%. What we've trying to do, and 15% is the number. So what we're trying to do to see if some way, since there are always questions about the EL students, we're trying to see if some way we can allocate additional resources for those students. This chart here is basically doing the same thing. If we wanted to add resources, these would be some of the places where we would allocate those resources, again, based on the 15% number. And this is part of, we're trying to do, if we had additional funds, this is where we would try to break out the school funds, site-based funds a little better, so that people can get, their allocation, provided that we had the money. And then this final chart is just the budget timeline. And as you can see, we're up to the point where it's February, I think, 14th, and we're presenting to the board. So we are on schedule in terms of making our presentations and doing the work. What we don't know. With the grant funding, especially respect to the Alliance grant by statute, all future increases in ECS must come through the Alliance. We did get a number today on the Alliance, and then also where there are still other grants that are coming through, but as we get information from the state, we will share that at future meetings. And then one final thought. The recent award of New Haven of the $37.8 million for the ESSER II grant has been extremely helpful as we continue to design robust academic and other improvements for our students. And that was evidenced in the slide that I had earlier that said that the new things that we were thinking about doing. However, ESSER is similar to the Title I grant and has the same restrictions on not supplanting expenses in the existing general fund budget. So what that means is that when you have X amount of dollars in general fund allocated for a school, you can't then say, okay, fine, because you have a Title I grant, you can't buy any supplies, and that you should buy all your supplies with Title I. And that is not supplanted, because the way the grants are written is that you're supposed to give the school the money they're entitled to first, and then the Title I grant is supplemental. So you want to supplement those funds with additional funds. If we do face a deficit between our expected general fund revenues and expenses for 22-23, we cannot use the ESSER grant to close that gap. The ARP ESSER funds have now been released and are more flexible. We will, however, be revising that grant to include costs which were originally denied in the original request. And that's my budget presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Hannons. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Hannans. Are there any questions? Mayor Elicker?
Thanks, Ms. Hannans. Can you give a little bit more context to the, it sounds like you did a little bit of research or had some conversations about the ARP-ESSER grants being a little bit more flexible in the context of our deficit?
Yes. Yes. What happened with our ARP-ESSER fund? We questioned the fact that we were not, that our indirect costs were denied. And from my 50 years experience, even though I'm only 25, my experience had says that we have always been eligible to claim indirect costs on grants that were federal. So what we're doing now is we're revisiting those costs that we had budgeted to see if we can reallocate those and put those back in the budget.
Gotcha. Do you have any sense of, I can't remember what the number was last board meeting about around the deficit, but how that might help? Or do you want to wait and get some better numbers for us and maybe share that in the future?
That hopefully, we're working on that now. So that hopefully we will have that ready for the next F&O meeting.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Hannans. Dr. Joyner?
I'm not asking for it tonight, obviously, but what I think we need that might paint an even clearer picture of our student population is the economic diversity in the district. And I don't know how quickly we get something like that, but what people fail to understand is that to help a child, to educate a child out of poverty is very expensive if you do it right. Because there are some experiences that you have to provide for those children that sometimes their parents are not able to provide. And Dr. Benitez and all you people who are currently employed know that well. And they'll tell you that it was those experiences that made the difference for them. Being able to take a trip to a museum, being able to have somebody pay for your prom when you can't pay for it yourself. I came up poor, and I know what a difference certain things made in my life. And if we could get a chart that shows the economic diversity. The other thing is that some of the kids come to this district with triple jeopardies. They come from a colonized background with a history of oppression. They come here poor. Sometimes they come here fleeing the risk of death in their home countries. And that's an expensive proposition to do. And so if we could just get a sense of the economic diversity in the district, I think that would be helpful too, because we're in a public relations battle. There are people who don't believe that some of these children deserve the expenditures that we give them. And at least let's try to win the moral battle and show a picture of our district that reflects the naked reality that some of these children were so poor that where they were before, water was an issue. Clothing was an issue, food was an issue, and what have you. I have a lot of confidence in this board and this superintendent and this mayor that we can at least show the way and paint a realistic picture of what we're dealing with. And at the same time, ask the kids and the families that we're trying to help us help you. That's critically important as well. So if we could get that would be helpful. The same chart where you show the ethnic diversity, if we can show the economic diversity.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. There's two things I guess I'd like to say about this. One is just to stress on page 11, slide 11, which was the budget ask, and point out the last bullet point that this reflects a status quo budget with no change in programming. So it's pretty much to keep things going as they are now. Obviously, we do have some extra funds through the grants that are funding some extra enhancements in the programs and people in classrooms, et cetera. But so just to stress that point, that this is kind of a status quo budget, and that this is, by being a status quo budget, it also is including budget mitigation things that we've done in the past in order to balance our budgets, which we've been able to do for the last 2 years. And I know people are working on doing it this year as well. So, I guess I would point out that, so for instance, one thing that is in that is, if I remember correctly, as a budget mitigation factor, we limit the step number that we bring some folks in, which might be affecting hiring as a way to save some money on that hiring, as opposed to other districts which might not have to do that. So I guess that leads into my second point, which is all the menu of new options are potentially grant funded options. And I just ask you all to also take a look at, is there anything that needs to be general fund budget that won't be able to be a grant funded? And should that be on the table there, that if we do get the funding for it, we would like to do something? So for instance, I wonder about, do we have, if we have a new code of conduct, do we have enough people to work on the restorative things? We added positions in that, and I believe that was successful. Do we have enough there? I hear complaints about IT support for the 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 devices for the students, because the library media specialists are often swamped in helping with that. And do we need to have some more IT support? So I'm just wondering if there's extra things, then I would request that you all take a look at that to see if that should be on the table for us to try to fight to find the funding for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any other discussion or questions? Okay. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam President. I almost said Madam Secretary. That's what I keep watching. No,
It's a good show.
Gotta let you laugh a little bit. So we move on to manufacturing update. Many of us are aware that we received we are receiving $2 million from Rosa Dolores' office to launch this manufacturing program. So now Ms. Velasquez will tell you where we are in the process.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, board members, and members of the public. I'm Evie Velasquez, the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. If I may share my screen. Okay, good. We just have a few slides to update you. We've been very busy. It's an exciting project for us. You'll see there, these are slides that we've been using with during information sessions where we've had over 150 families join to learn about the manufacturing offering. We've had to date 26 applications out of 45 that we will identify this spring. So we're doing very well. So the update, of course, the $2 million seed money that is coming from the federal government through Rosa Dolores' office is perfect because it aligns with our vision of having equitable opportunities for students. We know that STEM careers in particular would infuse a lot of great jobs in the community, will allow students to have a future beyond high school. That means also entry-level jobs at a much higher entry dollar amount. And we've heard as much as $65,000 as a starting entry level for students who are prepared with manufacturing. So we're really excited about this project because it's aligned with our vision, and it certainly will lead to a more equitable outcomes for our students. In the presentation to parents, we talked about the vision and the goals. You'll see that, of course, we have our lovely logo. We are using that to promote. It seems to be popular. This, of course, is a partnership with Gateway. We're in the process of signing or developing an MOU that will be coming your way to identify exactly what their role will be. we are interested in having them help us every step of the way with the curriculum. As you might know, Gateway has a manufacturing engineering program, which the students will both take classes, they'll be duly enrolled in our high schools and at Gateway in order to get up to 65 credits. So that's the potential of leaving high school with both a high school diploma and an associate's degree in manufacturing engineering. However, we also want to make sure, and we've been doing a really nice job of letting families know that while that is one path, that's an ultimate goal that many might achieve, we also have other opportunities along the way. So if a student graduates with a diploma but doesn't do the 65 credits, they could get one of two industry recognized certificates. One is in computer aided design, and the other one is in quality assurance, which is two things that are really important in manufacturing. And as we go out and we visit companies, like we were at Schick just recently, they have told us that when students are prepared by this program, there'll be many different entry levels for them. It won't only be those students who got to the 65 credits, but they're looking for students with many different abilities to fill many different jobs. Okay, so here's our statement of vision and goals. Like I said, 65 college credits, that has been something that's been attracting those families, right? This is 65 credits that they will not have to pay for. Students have the opportunity to get that associate's degree. And if they're interested in college, getting that 4-year degree, half of their 4-year education is already paid for. So that's a big draw. We're trying to explain all that it entails, right? We want to make sure that families and students understand that this is a commitment that involves potentially tutoring after school to make sure that their grades are keeping up with the program. We'll have summer term every year. Junior and senior year also, there will be apprenticeship opportunities, right? So the commitment, even though they have to make it when they're in 8th grade, right? Families have to sit down and think about what they want to do for how their child's education will look like for the next 4 years. We want to make sure that they understand exactly what we're asking of them. So this week, we're actually having one-on-one interviews with all the families. So this is just to give you some stats behind what we talk about with families about what manufacturing is, what the opportunities for jobs are. This is the different types of industries that are hiring. Yeah, these are some of the stats again. And then here we lay out with families exactly what the courses are. We've had a lot of questions about this. Everything that has an asterisk next to it is a duly enrolled program, meaning that in the first 2 years, our teachers who will be certified to teach those courses, the students will be enrolled and will get not only high school credit, but also college credit. And then in the later years, in the 3rd and the 4th year, we also will be sending students over to Gateway to take classes there. So this is tells you exactly how we're building this. In this first year, in September of 2022, we anticipate 15 students will be starting in 9th grade in the program, 15 at Wilbur Cross, and then 15 at Career. We also want to involve adult education. They're very excited about this and have been at the table right from the beginning. So making the labs accessible to them as well. And so you should understand that in this pathway, there's 3 big things that we're doing. One is we're going to be using that $2 million seed money to build 2 manufacturing labs, one at Wilbur Cross and one at Hill House. We've already identified the space. We've started to think about the plan about how that's going to happen over the next year. Even though students will start in September, their program they don't need to access the labs until the 2nd year. So for the first year, they'll have the computers that they need to take the coursework. They'll move into the laboratories. And just to explain a little bit about the laboratories look like, there is a room that is for the computer design. And then there's a shop floor in which what they develop in the programming then is applied to machines that build the things that they'll be making. So it's a very interesting design. We went to visit Hamden, and we're modeling our labs after Hamden. Career students, we won't have a lab there, but career students, we're working on a schedule so they would access labs at either Cross or Hill House. This is just some information that we've given to parents, and we have a link where they've been accessing this and submitting their names. Okay, I'll stop there and take questions.
Dr. Benitez?
Good evening, Ms. Velasquez. Thank you for your presentation. I have a few questions, but if you don't have answers, you don't need to feel pressure to answer them right away. One of the things that I would like to see is, I see that some of the coursework, it's in engineering, and my experience years ago with the engineering programming at Gateway is that a lot of our children of color are not necessarily represented there. So you might want to check what are their numbers in terms of distribution of students who are actually engaged in the regular program. And you might encounter that there are some issues on how they support people of color in the engineering program. I might be completely wrong because I haven't been there for a while, but I would recommend that to make this program successful. The other thing I'm thinking, when you said the lab at Career, I wonder if you had explored the partnership with Yale so that they might have access, walking distance access to a lab. Or you know, the engineering programs at Yale are excellent, and they might have similar things that they could share. I know that we do that with the biology program with the School of Medicine, so we might be able to develop some sort of a partnership. Again, these are things that I'm just suggesting, and hopefully you can do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Velasquez, for the presentation. And as someone who came through STEM, I'm very excited about the exploration that this district is doing. My question is just if you could talk a little bit more about the students making the decision in 8th grade and what that is like, or what is the decision that the parents and students or families make at that time.
Sure. So during the presentation, we gave them basically what you had. They asked a lot more. They had time to ask a lot of questions for each slide. And then were able to access the link to just submit their initial intent, right? Initial intent. We keep saying things like that because we want them to take this seriously, right? This was a first set of questions. The application comes in. We're going to do a one-on-one with them and go through the coursework and talk to them about the time commitment. The one thing we do not want to do is say, you have to be of academic standing XYZ. We're not going to have an entry exam. We are looking to make sure that we have the supports in place to differentiate how we support them through the program. And like I said, some will make it to the 65 credits. Some may not. Some might just get the industry recognized certificate. We're prepared to do that because we want to make sure the students come in and they're able to engage with the content to be successful. The Hamden program actually has had 35 students come through. Only 3 students have decided to not go on to take all of the college credits. So we're hopeful that we actually have a pretty good curriculum in place that we will continue to adjust to support them. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for walking through that.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcox?
I just had a quick question or two. Thank you for the presentation. For the spaces that are going to be built out at Cross and Hill House, are those for the exclusive use of this program, or are they going to also be able to be space that'll be able to be utilized for other programs there or in the district?
Yeah, it's primarily going to be for manufacturing. We're again going to use the federal earmark, which says $2 million to be used for the space for the manufacturing pathway. The one thing that is at Hill House, we're also talking about a small welding program that is actually connected to some of the manufacturing pieces. So there'll be a connection there. The space at Cross, there are some programs there that are, they kind of in the same space. We are going to work with an architect to utilize this space for multiple purposes. So we'll still have carpentry there, we'll still have automotive there, but the larger presence will be for the manufacturing piece.
Okay, thank you. I just also like that this program it's kind of like two parts to it. One is the industry certification, and the other is the more full-fledged, earning all those credits, because I can imagine life will get in the way for some folks during their 4 years of high school, but still be able to receive a certification. I know that's important for so many of our students with all the things like EMT training programs and nursing programs and all that. So, something that is a certification they can walk away with. That's also the kind of thing that I think would keep a person involved, knowing that they can at least do that, and that has value, and it gives them also something to shoot for. So I do appreciate this and any other programs the district builds on to connect to industry as well as to higher education. So that's great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Velasquez. The next one presentation is from Dr. Therian, who will talk to us about the new K-5 science program. Dr. Therian.
Thanks. I'm just trying to share my screen here. Very, very quickly, actually building off what the assistant superintendent was talking about with STEM and so forth. Obviously, we're very excited about manufacturing programs, biotech programs, everything for our secondary students. But, we have an opportunity now to look at our elementary science program. And so I just wanted to briefly update the board on what's happening with that. We will be presenting to Teaching and Learning, I believe, on Wednesday, more specifically about the adoption and some of the details, as well as the Finance and Operations Committee on the 22nd as well. And so obviously, elementary science matches up with many of our priority areas, including academic learning. Also going to focus on helping out our educators as well, getting our kids ready with the most current science learning, getting our teachers ready with the most current science instructional materials, putting it all together and getting them ready for the kind of programs that we're talking about in science and STEM, and getting ready for their future. We did present to Teaching and Learning in December about the pilot process, just to briefly review. In the spring and over the summer, the science department looked at about 15 different elementary science programs based on all the current research. Obviously, we're looking for alignment to the next generation science standards. Several on the board will remember that we presented to the board in 2018, I believe, on the new science standards and what that involves. Things like kids are figuring things out, not just learning about. The idea that they're coming up with their own explanations, the idea that they're really invested in science practices, and that it's integrated with things like literacy and math and social studies and other areas as well. So we looked at 3 different programs: Amplify, which is associated with the Lawrence Hall of Science, Smithsonian, from the Smithsonian Institute of Science Education in Washington, also associated with the National Science Resource Center, and FOSS, Full Option Science System, previously associated with Lawrence Hall of Science. We selected 2 to pilot, Amplify and Smithsonian. And so we actually piloted those between November and essentially now, February 2002. We had 18 teachers across 3 different grades, 6 different schools, representing a lot of diversity across New Haven students and staff. We had students of color, staff of color. We had English learners. We had students with special needs. So we had a wide diversity across all of these schools, neighborhood schools, magnet schools, et cetera. Lots of feedback from the teachers, discussions with the teachers. The assistant superintendent actually ran the teacher discussion herself last Monday, because she wanted to ask the questions, not me. That was fine. And we got a lot of feedback from the teachers and even from some of the kids. I actually observed 18 classrooms and talked to some of the students as well. We had a committee at the same time as we're doing the pilot with the teachers of administrators, not just from these 6 schools, but from other schools. We had people from the literacy department, the math department, the English learning department. We had parents, we had teachers. We examined the materials. The committee came up with criteria. We focused on science learning, the idea of, are kids really learning practices? Are they engaging and exploring before explaining? Are they figuring things out? Are we doing inquiry process? Are there supports for students, including literacy, English learners? Is the material relevant? In other words, does it match our students' needs? Dr. Joyner mentioned this about the diversity of our students. Did it match their interests? Was it engaging? What were the assessments like? Was there support for the teachers? How easy was it to use? I will say that the science department and the assistant superintendent themselves also looked at some other factors, such as, does it match the pacing that we expect? In other words, does it match the time that we've allotted for elementary hands-on science? Is it something that we're going to find easy to integrate with the other subjects? So the community themselves had 6 different meetings, presentations from the vendors, really delved into the teacher manuals, the student works. We looked at surveys. I consulted with some other districts in Connecticut that had adopted it. We went to the executive team, Dr. Tracy and her executive team, on February 9th. We presented kind of what we had found of these 2 different programs, Amplify and Smithsonian. Smithsonian scored slightly higher, not incredibly higher, but slightly higher in most areas, including on learning and support and assessments and teacher support. Amplify did score slightly higher on how engaging were their unit questions, but Smithsonian also had better pacing. It aligned with our expectations, about 100 minutes of hands-on science instruction a week for K-5 students. They had support for literacy, much stronger than Amplify, support for our English learners. The teachers really liked their discussion questions. They liked their assessments. And honestly, the ease of use, as we talked to other districts, was higher as well. We priced them both out, the different programs. Comparably, Amplify would have been in the neighborhood of 3.1 million, plus we would have had to pay extra for professional development, and Smithsonian came out to about 2.8 million. That includes, basically, you're talking 4 units per year, K through 5. So if you think it's about 450 classrooms, K through 5, so that's about 1,800 kits, plus 1 full refurbishment. It's unlimited license, unlike some of the other programs, so we never have to renew it. And they're providing about 147 equivalent days of professional development for our teachers too. So that will be our recommendation. We'll be talking about to the Teaching and Learning Committee about all the different pieces that come with it, et cetera. And we'll be talking to the Finance and Ops Committee about all the pieces and how it's structured. Happy to take any questions.
I can't see everyone's hands because of the screen. Oh, Dr. Yarborough, Dr. Joyner, and then Dr. Benitez, all the doctors. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you for your presentation and thank you for piloting this program. I'm curious for the ratings that I think the teachers gave and the committees gave for the relevance and equity that was higher for Amplify, but not as high for Smithsonian. Will you please speak more about kind of what was observed and also whether the Smithsonian can be adapted to include some of the elements that we think would increase relevance and equity for our students?
So relevance and equity was kind of a catch-all term I used for about 6 questions that were asked. And so the questions that were asked were about how engaging. So each one of so the concept is that it starts with a big engaging question, how do animals see in the dark, or et cetera, or Amplify tended to have questions that were kind of these unique, interesting problems like, is there a possibility that we can set a maglev train in our city to cause things? So the teachers, because there was kind of these unique problem solving things, really rated that higher than Smithsonian. Although when you delved into it, Smithsonian had those projects in the unit. They just weren't the unit questions. The rest of the questions asked in that were things like, are there connections to social studies? Is this relevant for urban students? I wouldn't say that there was a significant difference between the two. As a matter of fact, some of the people thought the Smithsonian in those particular areas came out higher because we're talking Smithsonian. So this organization that developed this program is not just a science organization, it's Smithsonian, so it's got connections to archaeology and history. They've got an African American history museum and cultural relevance, and so they've got lots of stuff that brings in with the literacy and the videos and the things that supports them. It just didn't show up for the particular units that the teachers were doing. So I do think that there's a way that we can work once we adopt. The assistant superintendent and I have been talking about how do we connect to the other subject areas, social studies and math and literacy, to create more rich interdisciplinary projects, I think especially at the end of units, that will address that exact kind of thing that people thought Amplify was better at in the beginning.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Right.
Dr. Joyner and then Dr. Benitez. You're muted, Dr. Joyner. You're muted.
I'll be glad to follow Dr. Benitez.
Okay.
Okay. Dr. Benitez.
I actually, a lot of what Dr. Jarborough addressed and that conversation answers some of my concerns, but I have one big concern.
Sure.
Richard knows. And before I go on, Richard, it's great to see you. I
You
believe
too.
you are Dr. Therian now. Is that correct?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. And so just
Dr. Benitez, by the way, held my hand through my dissertation. So I'm just saying.
so Richard, my concern is, did you say 100 minutes a week?
So what we have now as our guideline for elementary science, out of the 1,800 minutes that students have for instruction time in K-5, our guideline right now is about 100 to 120 minutes a week of hands-on science. The concept with adopting a new science program is that, as many of you know, previously we had a program that was adopted 22 years ago. So materials are 22 years old and rotated beneath the schools so that we had a kit center that sent out kits to one school, they'd bring it back, sent out to another school, so that each school was different, doing different units at different times. So there really wasn't the opportunity to integrate it with the literacy and the social studies and the math. So the concept here is that we're going to send these units to the schools. Everybody across the district will be doing, let's say, the third grade weather unit in the fall, right? The first thing in the fall, they'll be doing third grade weather. And now they'll be able to integrate it with their literacy and their math and the social studies. so that the hands-on part might be 100 minutes a week. But in their literacy class, they'll be doing reading and notebooking. In social studies, there'll be connections to that area, et cetera, so that it'll be much more integrated. And like some of the teachers that I observed doing the pilot said, look, my kids don't know whether it's science time or math time or literacy time or social studies time. They're just learning all together.
Right.
And so that's the flexibility that we want to give them. So yes, I do expect them to do the lessons that are in the units that roughly are about 100 minutes a week, but I'm sure their integrated learning is going to be much richer and stronger.
And my second question is, I believe that you said that the teachers will have some time for professional development, which I'm sure is going to address what you just said, that integration and all that. And I imagine you're working with Ms. Velasquez in making sure that teachers do have that time for the training. That's always a concern of mine, and you know that it's always been one of my concerns, that we say we have this training, but we have to make the time where teachers actually can have time to think and to learn and to be able to implement correctly what they are doing. And not that I'm saying that you don't do that. I'm just saying, you know, 22 years later, I can't believe it's 22 years. I like that we are dealing with Carolina, which is what was the previous, was kind of the same. I mean, you call it Smithsonian, but it's still from the same people that we have worked in the past, and that was very good. As a person who ran a science-based program, that was a good tool to have. So I congratulate you on that, but I just want for you to keep in the forefront that teachers do need the training and that we have to be flexible, giving them the time to learn.
I think that, so we've talked with the company preliminary. Obviously, we don't want to put anything, and you'll see at Teaching and Learning the whole menu of professional development opportunities. You know, we're looking at an example of a train the trainer model first. So a school representative, and that's really about training someone to understand what's in the kits, what are the pieces, what are the parts, how do you help the teachers? And then as you're right, the assistant superintendent and I have talked about doing a summer academy for teachers to come in and spreading it out. It's not going to be like we're going to make all these elementary teachers spend 2 or 3 days at the beginning and say, here's your training, here's your kit. Okay, see you later kind of thing. The advantage of this particular program, because it's you know, even though we're spending all the money in the spring, that's why you don't see it in Ms. Hannon's budget proposal. The training is spread out as we need it, as we go through, and in conjunction with our department in the schools, so that I think it's going to be the kind of thing where teachers are going to feel very well supported in the kind of professional development they need.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, thank you. Ms. Velasquez and Dr. Darian, I'm excited to hear more updates on this as you roll it out and it gets going. This is a very cool project, both of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for presenting, Linda, Ms. Velasquez, and Dr. Therian. Thank you so much.
Dr. Tracy, does this conclude your report?
Yes.
That concludes my report.
Okay. I apologize for the lighting on my end. I don't know what's happening. Everything is exactly in the same in the room that I'm in, but for some reason I'm darkened out. So President's report will be very brief. Thank you all for responding to my request about picking the dates, for giving me good dates for the board retreat. We landed on March 1st and 2nd, 4 to 8 p.m. It'll be via Zoom. Presenters available on those dates, and now we're just getting Dr. Tracy, Mr. Wilcox, and Dr. Joyner and I are talking about agenda items, things we want to make sure get presented at the retreat. So thank you, and you'll hear more as we get closer on that. Any questions or discussion? Okay. Head Start report, Mr. Wilcox.
This will be very brief because there is not one. Our next meeting is this Thursday at 5 p.m.
Okay. Citywide School Building Committee report.
This group met last Thursday. As always, I invite you all to take a look at the posted stewardship report, which is part of the other meeting materials for that meeting. Always has a lot of interesting information and kind of gets at some of the larger capital projects and things that are going on in the district. One thing I'll also point out is that we did add to the agenda for this meeting, and it'll be part of the stewardship report moving forward, is also a subject line for building security issues, just so that we can start to take a look at that. And so if you'll look at those other meeting material minutes, you'll start to get a sense of things like how challenging it is to have thousands and thousands and thousands of doors with keys, and having to keep track of all of those, and a variety of other things. So we are taking a look at that. I would also, if there are principals and others that are on the call or on the Zoom meeting, is just a reminder that Mr. Lamb and his team have spent a lot of time trying to work on the work order system. And so that is becoming more and more an interesting source of data for some of these things, like looking at security issues. So just invite you all to continue to use that, so that if stuff's in the system, then other people can take a look at it, not only for that specific work order, but to also see the trends in a building or in the district. So that's the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Finance and Operations.
This one is in the category of good news. We met last week. The information is in your packets. We looked at two things that I'll bring up. One is the food service budget, wherein previously in the year it was looking like this budget for food service might be problematic, or might have a deficit rather. And right now, Mr. Gormany and Ms. Shari are looking at this, and it seems like we're going to be coming in on budget for the food service, which is great. A whole lot of pieces go into it, but the information's in your packet and it's posted on the website. The other thing I always like to point out is we did also take a look at the hours for the Echo Urban arrangement, and staff reported that they anticipate being on track for also having everything line up for the using the allotted hours that we're paying for that contract. So those are two things that seem to be on track. So.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Wilcox? Okay. Governance report, Dr. Benitez. And I apologize, Dr. Benitez and Dr. Yarborough, that your names are not by your committees. We'll make sure to let Ray know, to make sure that she adds that to it.
Very briefly, we had our first meeting, and I, as I said in the beginning, it's something new for me. I'm learning, and I am very, very glad that Tiffany Jackson, Miss Tiffany Jackson, is working with me. But in our discussion, one of the things that we discuss is the need for us to update our policies. And as you can see in the documents that we share with you, we are looking at always at the highlights of some of the new statutes or new policy that affects how we are writing our own policy. And one of the things that we thought it's a good idea is to purchase resource materials from CAPE that will accelerate the work that we are trying to do. We do have a request for everybody to get really involved in those things that you are supposed to be working on in each of your committees, or if you have made a commitment to work on a policy, to please make sure that you keep track of the time. And Ms. Jackson could give us a little bit more details on timelines, but at this point, unless she feels comfortable talking about it right now, we might share that with you in the future. Ms. Jackson?
Yes, I just for clarification, because I know there was a little bit of confusion, and I apologize in the memo. So really what we're looking for right now, although there have been some policies, if we remember back to the audit that was done by CABE, there were some outstanding required policies that were done that we've gotten through those, but the policy process has been seemingly slow. What this will allow us to do is to update some of the policies that have been dated from the 1990s so that they have the new kind of legislative information. We will be able to do that and then back out the policies that we really want to work on that are unique to New Haven. I think Dr. Joyner just mentioned it too, that some of those things really don't necessarily cover what's necessary here in New Haven. I know the Teaching and Learning Committee, they're going to be working on grading policies, and there's a few other things, but what we're asking for is twofold. We want to make sure that we have updated policies. So even though CABE does provide you with an opportunity as a member to go online and to view some of their policies, this will give us an opportunity to have them all updated. And then what we're asking, the second thing we're asking is the committee to go in and please take a look at what are the policies that are really important to move forward, to bring those things and for your committees to start working on those policies, because that process is going to be really important for us to be able to start moving some things forward that are really important for the district.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Further, we will give you more information as we continue working with this, but thank you very much. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Benitez? No? Okay. Food Service Task Group report, Dr. Yarborough.
Yes, thank you. The Food Services Task Force met, and there is an updated information, or there will be updated information on food allergy to be posted soon. The Food Gap Group, who is attending to the gaps during different breaks of the school year, including this coming February break, they have something great lined up, flyers included in the board packet. And I really do applaud the careful and detailed and thoughtful planning and our food services staff for their high collaboration with numerous community partners. CFAN, Connecticut Food Share, United Way, Greater New Haven, Loaves and Fishes, NICE, Cathedral of Higher Praise, Breakthrough Church, Clifford Beers, and New Haven Public Schools are among some of the partners, and there are 4 sites where food will be available for families to pick up. So I'm very grateful for that work being done. And that's all that I'll share right now from our Food Services Task Force. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Dr. Yarborough? No. Dr. Jordan, did you have your hand raised? You're muted. You're muted.
You're on mute, Dr. Joyner.
I said I was just saying, I had my hand up praising them because both Dr. Benitez and Dr. Yarborough are doing a phenomenal job. They just hit the ground running.
Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you.
We work with great teams.
Thank you. All right, and so with that, I will move that we go into executive session pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 12006A regarding discussion concerning mid-year performance and evaluation of public officer or employee, Dr. Eileen Tracy, Superintendent, and we'll invite Dr. Tracy and Attorney Alexiades There a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote to go into executive session. Dr. Joyner,
I think Attorney Alexiadis had his hand up.
Attorney Alexiadis?
Just a practical question before we leave this. Do we have a link for the executive session? I didn't see it.
No, I was gonna mention that after the vote, but yes, I haven't seen a link either. Dr. Tracy or Dr. White, did anyone?
I sent the link. I did not include Attorney Alexiadis, so I will send you a link separately. But I
Okay.
sent the.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so we'll vote to go to executive session. Dr.
Just
Joyner?
point of order, we got to
Yes.
vote.
Yes,
Yes.
she's just, yes.
We're voting now. Can you,
Okay,
can you guys
sorry.
hear me okay?
Yeah, we could. It's-
Okay, just making sure. Dr. Joyner,
Yes,
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Remember, you have to leave this meeting and then join the executive session with the link that was sent in the emails.
Hollywood Squares.
Are we all back? We're missing still, right?
Let's see, who's,
Dr. Yarborough. Um,
Have a quorum.
he's here.
There he
He's
is.
here. Everybody's here.
Okay, we are out of executive session and back in regular session. No votes were taken in executive session. We had a really good discussion, which we will continue at our next board meeting, again in executive session. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Okay, Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Good night, everyone, and thank you all for a
Ms.
great
Mason has a
meeting.
question.
She has a question.
Where is she? I don't see her on my. Ms. Mason, go ahead. I don't, okay.
Thank you for acknowledgement. I need a repeat of who moved the motion and who seconded.
The motion to adjourn. Who wants
Yes.
to take responsibility for that?
I think it was Wilcox and Joyner.
Mhm.
Wilcox made the motion, I seconded. Abby was gonna do it, but I beat her to the punch.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.